Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching that video that I put out last week. I got a ton of really good feedback and it seems like a lot of people were really interested in the process that I went through in order to create it. So because of all those comments, I actually just put together a tutorial video, the video that you're currently watching, to kind of show you how I went about doing that. It's a very in-depth video, it's really slow, it's really paced out, so feel free to skip through it to see what you actually need. One thing that's really important with this method is to make sure that you're filming in double the frame rate of what your final export is planned to be. So if you're exporting at 30 frames per second, make sure you're shooting at 60. That'll give you a lot of leeway in the end, which you'll find I kind of talk about a bit later on in the video. And if this is the first video you're seeing, you have no idea what's going on here, you can check out the video that I put out last week that kind of talks about what virtual production is, as well as this method that I've kind of put together in order for people with no budget and no equipment to be able to kind of utilize it, to learn Unreal and to be able to place their characters in worlds that they would never be able to physically. So we're going to start off by opening up After Effects. You're going to create a new composition from your footage. You scrub through it, figure out what parts you want to actually have featured in the scene. So I'm going to end it here. And then I'm going to start it right at that click. Once that's all set up, I'm gonna type in key, and you're gonna look for this key light spill suppressor. Drag that onto your footage. Grab the color dropper tool thing. Pick a random nice flat green spot on your green screen. Click that. Click on this intermediate result. You're gonna look at screen matte. And what you want to do here is you want to make all of the whites kind of a pure white and all of the blacks just like a pure black. So you do that by clicking on screen matte. Clip black, bring that up as much as you can. Clip white, bring that to kind of fill out those blacks. This is going to kind of separate you from that background. So go back to look at intermediate result. And you'll see I'm pretty full. The background's all gone, but I have some of this spill. Up here, so we're going to want to try to get rid of that. So you're going to click on reduce chatter, and then this advanced spill suppression, you switch it, it starts at standard, you switch that to ultra, and then hit the little box next to advanced spill suppression, and that'll get rid of the majority of the color here. You can keep playing around with these tools over here to refine it, but what I've noticed in Unreal, at least for me, is that it's becomes basically unnoticeable by the time that you add in all your lighting from Unreal Engine. So once that's all set, if your green screen is small like mine, you then can add a mask. So what I like to personally do is pull out the pen tool and just pretty much draw around the body like this, to a point where you know that your arms aren't going to be moving out of the space. Then you have yourself separated from that background. Scrub through to make sure that when your arms are flailing around a bit, there's no issues. And this looks pretty all set for me, so I'm going to hit File, Export, Add to Render Queue. You go down here and you'll see that this says lossless over here. You're going to want to click that. Make sure that that format's set to AVI. And then down here where it says channels, click on that, change it to RGB plus alpha. Alpha will allow you to actually remove yourself from the black background when you're in Unreal Engine. Click OK. Click on this over here. Go back to whatever folder you want to be saving it to. For me, it's going to be over here. Hit save and then render. And we can see the AVI file linked right here. Double click that to open it up. So we can see here that we have it all set up, and right now it's just autofilling as a black background. So once Unreal's open, let's just create a new project here. We'll just open up the blueprints one that they have. Create that. Open up that blueprints project. So yeah, this looks pretty cool in here. Let's find a little spot that we can shoot at. I think a good spot would be if we were to take this bench and say this plant and rotate it about 90. Move that over here. Maybe 70. Move it over there. Add this other plant to the other side of it. And then delete that bench back there. And then we take a camera, and especially make a new camera. Move that right over here. Change the field of view down to something like 40, just to make it easier. Once again, you can do whatever settings you want here, but these are just the ones that I like to do. Let's go into content, make it a new folder, name it media, double click that, go to that folder where your file is. Right here it says the AVI, drop that in here, double click that, save it, right click, make a new media player. You're gonna want it to add in the texture asset as well. Hit OK, name it something. I'm gonna name it media for now. Double click it, double click that file that you just added in. We can see there's no black background, that's good. Save it, exit, take that media video, double click it, make sure everything looks right, save that too. Then you're going to make a new plane. Drag that into the scene, rotate it to the right angle, and then make sure that the angle matches the bench. Slide that up. Take that media texture, drag that onto the plane, and that'll create a new media material. So for testing purposes, we're just going to change this to translucent, and we're going to take the A, and we're going to move that onto opacity. That's going to get rid of that black background for you. Apply, save, exit, go to Window, Cinematics, Sequence Recorder. We're gonna just make this sequence length crazy long for the time being. Take that camera actor, add that on, hit record, and then stop it. Go into Cinematics, Sequences, Recorded Sequence, open that up. Then in here we can see that we have our sequence. We're going to go in and delete everything in here, and then we're going to track, media track, click this, add in that media source that you had added in previously, drag it over to the start. We can see it's much longer than the actual sequence, so we're just gonna slide this out. Slide this out, right click on it, hit properties, and add in that media texture that you had previously. So we can see that you're now in the scene up here. Hit play. This clearly is not long enough, so let's extend this out a bit more and extend this to the point that you can see a little stripe in it showing that it's duplicating. So right there is duplicating, so I like to add a little bit of overhang to it just in case. And then take your end of clip, drag it all the way out. Take your camera actor, add that to your camera cut. Line it up, make sure it ends at the same point. Hit play, and you'll be able to see yourself moving. So now we need to go in and mess with the rotation and scale of your character. Rotate it 90 degrees so it's lined up right. So we can see here that it's clearly not lined up right with the chair. So unsave that, bring it back to that original 90 degrees that it had. so that that red bar is lined up right. Then you can rotate it your 90 degrees and then bring it back to lining up with the chair. So you can see I'm lined up right now. So when I shot this, it was vertical 16:9, so we need to do some little bit of math here to figure out what the right scale is. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just gonna do something around 0.75 and then 1.25 to get roughly the right scale. Then scale yourself up a bit. That seems pretty much okay. I'm a bit big. That looks good. Drag yourself down so it looks like you're actually sitting in that chair. I like to bring myself forward a little bit. And then look at your camera. I look really small. So let's bring that back up. Let's pin that to the screen. Maybe lift yourself up a little bit. This is all just going to be playing around a bit. I didn't plan to put myself into the scene, so nothing's going to be perfect here, but if you do a little bit of pre-planning, everything will look pretty good. So let's do this, maybe bring it back a tad. That looks pretty okay. So we can see that the coloring is pretty accurate here. It's not awful. We're getting the sunlight coming from the right direction, but I am a bit dark. Not so much in camera, but in engine I look a little bit dark. So let's go back into content browser, go to content, back to media, and let's hit that media material. So in here, what we're pretty much gonna do is we're gonna replicate some of the sliders that you might find in something like Photoshop or Adobe Lightroom in order to kind of fix a bit of the lighting of the scene. So we can see here, I'm a bit too pale for the scene. Like I should be getting a little bit more of the light hitting me. So that's gonna be fixed in engine. So what we're gonna look at here is more fixing the contrast and the darkest darks, the lightest lights, more like the whites and blacks slider that you can find inside of Lightroom. So to do that, first I'm gonna add in multiply node, and then I'm gonna add in just a variable number, drag that to B, drag RGB A, so A, and then drag that to emissive color. So what this is gonna do, it's gonna play with kind of how bright you are overall. So if we slide this all the way up to say 27, you can see that I'm literally glowing. We don't necessarily want that. We just want to bring it up something small. So let's just go 0.8 for now. That looks fine. It's not a big change, but it's enough of a change. If we bring that back to 0, you can see kind of what it does a bit better. Yeah, a little bit brighter. So let's move that over to the side. And what we're going to do next is add in 3-point levels. Bring that RGBA from your texture down into the texture and add in 3 more values by holding down 1 and left clicking. Drag the top one to new black, new middle, and new white. And the way you can think about this is kind of like it's like black, contrast, and white sliders inside of Lightroom. So this will help us with both, I guess, like the dynamic range of the image as well as the contrast of it. Just so we can look at it a bit, let's bring this result to base color. And just so you can see what each of the sliders do, let's bring this blacks up all the way. And we can see that all the blacks in the image are blown out very, very bright white. So we don't want that. So let's bring that to somewhere around, I like to do something like a 0.2 to start out. And then let's look at the whites. We'll bring that up to say, we'll bring that up all the way so you can see what that's doing. This will blow out all of the brighter parts of the image. See on this side. So once again, if you look here at the right side where the light is hitting me is blown out. And then back here, if I bring this up all the way, the darker left side of the image is blown up all the way. So once again, bring that back to 0.2. Let's bring this up somewhere around 1, just because I'm bright enough for the image as it is, so I don't need to do too much here. And this is going to be your contrast, your middle point, right? So if we bring this up all the way, we'll see that it's purely flat. I'm pretty bright. We'll fix that later. And if we bring it down all the way, it's honestly pretty solid. Not bad, but we can see that there are some points in it over here where it's a little messed up. So what I like to do is kind of split the difference of the two. And we can see that the colors themselves look fine, but overall I have like a little bit of a white cast to me. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna kind of bring back in some of that contrast with blend overlay. I can't type. There we go. Let's bring that RGBA back into base, and let's bring this result into blend, and then bring that result into base color. We can see, it looks pretty good. I'm a bit bright right now, so let's bring this down to say 0.8. That's 0.9 almost. There we go. That looks pretty solid. So let's apply that. And then save. Exit out. And we can see that looks pretty good. I'm a bit too bright still, so we'll bring that back down in a second. Maybe to 0.6. 0.51. Sure, that looks okay. Once again, this is all just trial and error, it's just kind of playing around a bit. Exit out of that. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. And then to add in some more blending, you can either take your post-processing volume and mess around with the white balance here, or what I like to do is go into camera just because, and we'll go into the white balance of the camera, click temperature. I usually like to make my scenes a little bit warmer, so we'll bring that up a bit. That looks okay. Bring it down a bit. That also looks fine. So we'll bring it up to about 7.5, and let's add a bit of like a purplish tint to it, a little magenta. That'll blend you into the scene a little bit better, and that looks pretty cool. So what you can do after that is you can kind of add some more like motivated lighting. So if we say we take this random light over here, see if we have that all. Yeah, move it around. You can see what the actual other lights that you can add in will do to the scene. So if I bring this up, I can get some more of those like rays going overhead. It's kind of green, so I don't really like that too much, but we can use this to help motivate the scene. So we can see that the sun's coming from this direction over here. So if we move this over here, we can kind of cast some rays right in front of it, which looks pretty nice. I'm happy with that. Actually, let's get rid of this light. Let's just move that out of the way. Let's actually take this big ray over here. I like this a lot. Let's move it and have that cast over behind me. We'll see what that looks like in camera. This will help motivate that light that's being cast on me because it's very strong. So we can kind of add this in as like more of an effect, so you can kind of see, oh yeah, that is the direction the light's coming from. Cool. So once that's done, click out of that. And then we can kind of get ready to start our final render. So we just click play through this, hit. So go into here, hit play on this. We can see everything looks pretty good, right? It's not the most high quality environment, so it doesn't look really too real. This doesn't look like the most real chair in the world. But you click play, everything seems to be working pretty well. But what I've noticed with Unreal is that it's not really optimized for this type of workflow. So what's gonna happen when we hit render is that I'm either gonna be a lot slower in the final output or a lot faster. So the best way to kind of go about this is, I personally like to change the FPS here to something around 60, whatever you shot natively in your camera, which I highly recommend shooting at 60 so you kind of have some wiggle room in the long run. But yeah, play through that, looks good. Go to do your final output and then change the folder, of course, to where you want it to go. And then use custom frame rate here, make it 24 frames per second, switch to 1920 by 80 just because you can, and then turn off any type of compression, and then just hit capture and see what happens, because there's going to be different little bugs to it everywhere you go. Right here, it looks pretty okay. It doesn't look like it needs too much of any changes. So let's open that up. So yeah, it looks a little bit slow, right? So let's see what will happen now if we change that output. If we change that output now to 60 frames per second instead. Capture it. Open up the capture folder. And yeah, see, now I'm double speed, but it's a lot better to be at 60 frames per second at double speed than it is to be 24 frames per second at half speed. And I'll show you why right now. So exit out of this, open up your Premiere project, take that file, drag it in, create a new sequence at, say, we'll do 30 frames per second. Okay. We have our little sequence here. Let's drag this down into here. Keep existing settings. And let's see what happens when we render and hit play. So we can see here I'm at double speed, but that's okay because I'm running at 60 frames per second, so I have a little bit of wiggle room here. Once again, nothing's going to be perfect with this method, but it's just tricks to kind of work around what you're working with. So let's take this, hit the speed, and change it to something like 75 for the time being, right? That looks a little bit better. This looks more of the original speed. So what we're going to do now to actually figure out whether or not this is right is we're going to take the original file, the original shot, add that in, and place that in here. I personally like to see it as well, so we'll change the opacity down to something like 65. So let's actually get rid of that, and we can look here.
A new method of filmmaking that allows...
Cut this here. Back it up.
A new method of filmmaking that... A new method of... A new method of... A new method of filmmaking that allows storytellers to place their characters in virtual worlds with greater ease than ever before.
So we can see that it's a bit too slow, right? So let's change that to about 80%.
A new method of filmmaking that allows storytellers to place their characters in virtual worlds with greater ease than ever before.
And that's passable. So once again, you're gonna have little bugs here and there, but you can always go in and tweak it to have it be exactly perfect. But for my purposes at the moment, this is pretty okay. So let's render that.
A new method of filmmaking that allows storytellers to place their characters in virtual worlds with greater ease than ever before.
We can see after the fact how it keeps doing random stuff at the end, and that's because we added that overhang. But that overhang is what allows us to do that. If we weren't to have that overhang, then that little bug at the end could happen anywhere in the actual part of the footage that we want to have in our final cut. So what we can just do is
greater ease than ever before.
Go to the end and just cut it there. Expand this out back, and then at the end we have this.
A new method of filmmaking that allows storytellers to place their characters in virtual worlds with greater ease than ever before.
And that's basically how you do it. At the end you can just file, export media, save it as test, and then export it. And then we go back into it.
A new method of filmmaking that allows storytellers to place their characters in virtual worlds with greater ease than ever before.
If you made it to this point in the video, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate everyone kind of taking the time to learn this alongside with me. If you have any recommendations or you figured anything else out during your testing, please let me know, put it in the comments, send me a message, literally anything. I'm really looking forward to kind of building a community of people using the same type of methodology. And then I also have a video coming out hopefully next week that will kind of show you what you can do with this process if you're going to try to make a short film. It's not necessarily a short, it's more like a tech demo highlighting what you can do with this. And I have a few more things in the works that I'm going to be planning on making videos about in the weeks to come. So thanks again for watching. Once again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about here, check out that video that I made last week, and I'll see you next time.